Hello again, Struck. Here I am with another news info video regarding Diablo 4. And this time around we have some big news from yesterday, last night's developer live stream where Riker was a guest host and Diablo 2 had two developers as well as the community manager partaking and sharing some juicy bits about all sorts of stuff. They talked Helltide Areas, Ancestral and Sacred items, unique items, Paragon boards and Paragon Glyphs, Nightmare dungeons, secret reveal regarding another beta event coming in May, as well as Sigils for the nightmare dungeons and many other things that I will try to cover in this video. So buckle up, Struck. I hope you enjoyed this info and let's go. So I will try to cover the areas in the, let's say, order they appeared as information provided to us during that stream. First of all, the developers talked a lot about, well, not a lot, but enough about the Capstone dungeon and the world tiers. The Capstone dungeon is a dungeon players need to complete to unlock world tier 3 Nightmare. And they're saying that there will be more than one. And most likely they decided to maybe remove the requirement of killing certain world bosses to unlock world tiers. And maybe they decided to replace it with Capstone dungeons or maybe World Tier 6, which I'm not sure if they removed it or they're just not showing it yet in developer videos. Maybe that one is the one that requires the boss, or maybe World Tier 5 is the one that requires a boss, or maybe all of them 3, 4, and 5, and anything after that, if there is after that, will require Capstone Dungeon. What we do know is that World Tier 3 definitely requires a Capstone Dungeon, and there's multiple Capstone Dungeons, so we know that at least one more World Tier will require a Capstone Dungeon to be completed before you can unlock that difficulty. What we know about them is that they are longer and more challenging dungeons with big boss encounters and quote here mixed throughout. I wonder what that would mean. At higher world tiers, we know that enemies become smarter, and it's not just more HP and more damage. The developers confirmed that the enemies start behaving differently. Enemies are more aggressive, more accurate, faster, and champion creatures also spawn, which are kind of stronger elites. Examples of behavioral logic for the monsters that gets adjusted to provide a higher difficulty is how monsters do targeting, as well as some projectiles have seeking, so they home in on a target to some extent, as well as how monsters get grouped up um, um, and which people they do target. Another area they talked about is sacred and ancestral gear. As we've known for quite some time, sacred and ancestral items drop only on the higher tiers, which is 3 and above. Yesterday's live stream confirmed that sacred items start dropping at world tier 3, while ancestral at world tier 4. Sacred items drop in a very large range in terms of the stats, values, and power they provide, which is kind of between level 50 and 70. You may end up getting very lucky to get a drop powerful enough to serve a level 70 character as early as a level 50-51 character. Once you get to higher levels, content, you will be a little more likely to get drops on the upper bracket of this power swing. But the good thing about this system is that there will be a chance to get very lucky early to help you with the leveling. Um, so this means what is worth noting is that the level requirement for those strong items will not be level 70, but rather the level at which your character is when looting the item will be the level requirement to equip it. This is where trading Huber well-rolled sacred and I'm assuming ancestral ascended items, ancestral items, um, will become the bearer of both good and bad news by introducing an incentive for people to partake in a gray market trading for real money. The live stream also briefly talked about unique items, and we do know that they also start dropping as early as World Tier 3, obviously on the higher tiers as well. If you want the full list, you may want to check the video that I made regarding unique items, a full list of those, or you can go to diablo4.cc, which I used to make that video. I've also taken the information from diablo4.cc and deciphered it as much as possible, then put it into my spreadsheet for quest trees as a separate sheet entry in the quest tree spreadsheet alongside my updated list of legendary aspects for each quest that I've put into the quest next to the quest tree. So you might want to check my spreadsheets. I've put links into the description, but also diablo4.cc as well. But in diablo4.cc, you have to decipher certain things, which I tried to do myself, and hopefully I've done well. There's also a reminder that players can only have one unique item equipped at the same time. So unique items are very powerful, built around me loot that will be extremely rare and will only drop on world tier 3 and above difficulties. Again, watch my video if you want more information, or just check diablo4.cc or my spreadsheet link in the description. Regarding Helltide Areas, that was another thing that was covered in the live stream. Helltides. As Blizzard told us not so long ago in a dev video about Endgame, Helltides, Helltides are open world overworld events that happen periodically. If I'm not mistaken, there is a 1 hour cooldown after a Helltide event ends before the next one begins. So the cycle is 1 hour event, 1 hour break, 1 hour event, 1 hour break, and so on. Everything becomes more challenging in a Helltide area. There will be various events inside of that big Helltide event area. Players will get to face stronger versions of certain bosses in the Helltide areas, as well as our boy the Butcher will also have a chance to appear for some fresh meat in the overworld to mess up your plans. And you see why that might be annoying in a moment. As players kill monsters in the Helltide areas, they will obtain a temporary, stressing on temporary currency called Cinders. Those cinders will be used to open slash purchase Helltide caches that are spread around the Helltide areas. Each Helltide cache will correspond to an item SWOT and have a different cost. Every time a Helltide event is up there, will be a random placement of which Helltide cache spawns where. So this means even if you're doing a Helltide event in the same area as you've done before, the Glyphs, for example, cache, will not be in the same place every time. And if you're after a unique pair of Glyphs, you have to look for the location of the Glyphs cache every time. So yeah, all of them will be randomized. They did not confirm whether every time there is a Helltide area event, whether it will always contain a cache for every SWAT, or whether some SWATs would be missing. But my guess is that each item SWAT, each gear SWAT, each type of item will have a cache that corresponds to it that you can target, as long as you can find it within that 1 hour. But since the event is timed and the temporary cinders will disappear after the Helltide is over, one may not always have enough time to uncover where all caches are. The stakes during those Helltide events will be higher. Every time a player dies during a Helltide, they lose forever half of their cinders, which is not dropping them on the ground, but rather they just completely disappear. Another important thing that will make us want to do Helltide events is that there are certain crafting and upgrade materials that only drop in Helltide areas. One such example is the Fiend Rose that I noticed in the open beta as a requirement to get my items upgraded past a certain grade. So it will be an important crafting slash upgrade material And that's just one example of such that drop during Helltide areas only. Another thing that was discussed was nightmare sigils and dungeons. We finally got a glimpse at some example nightmare sigils and got to hear more in-depth info about the nightmare dungeons and the various mechanics in them, as well as the main incentive to do those. We'll start getting our first sigils as we move on to World Tier 3, 4 and 5, but initially our primary source of sigils will be the Whispers of the Dead / Bounties system. They can also be salvaged for sigil dust, and players can then use that sigil dust to craft sigils at the occultists. As we saw in the beta, they do exist, those recipes for certain sigils of various different ranks. Sigils will be tied to a level and they will affect the monster level in that nightmare dungeon. They will have a number of afflictions / affixes and uh, number that will grow as the sigil rank grows. When you open a nightmare sigil, it will open a portal near an existing dungeon. Nightmare Sigil, Nightmare Sigils will apparently change what the layout in I'm quoting here change. They were saying what the layout of a center dungeon looks like and that the Nightmare Sigils will be changing that. Not sure what they mean by this, whether they really mean the actual layout, whether it's procedurally gonna generate different hallways and corridors to walk through, or just using change in a broader sense here. They did mention that things like the nightmare portals that spawn additional enemies that are not native to that dungeon will definitely add some sort of a change there, but I don't think it refers to layout here. And there's also various afflictions and greater afflictions. Another example they showed is Stormbane's Rat, where there's a big floating disc thing that occasionally pulses out a big stunning damaging effect. Nightmare dungeons are also directly tied to the Paragon system because players will be able to upgrade Paragon Glyphs in the Nightmare dungeons. This can be done when they reach the end of the Nightmare dungeons. And this brings us to the next thing to talk about. Paragon Glyphs. Paragon Glyphs are socketables that go into sockets on the Paragon board. Each class has one +8 Paragon boards. So I will be talking about glyphs and boards in this segment. It's going to be a little longer segment, but I want to keep them in one segment altogether. So as I said, each class has one +8 Paragon boards, which is a starting board, and then 8 more that are dedicated to certain playstyles. Every single board has a glyph socket, so this adds up to 9 possible glyph sockets that players can take. But if you take the 9 possible glyph sockets, you will be sacrificing a lot of legendary and rare nodes, so it probably won't be as smart. Glyphs are some of the single most powerful modifiers you can apply to your characters, above legendary powers, and in some cases even above some unique powers. I have 5 videos, one for each class, where I deep dive into all of the Paragon boards of every class. And you may definitely want to check those out on my YouTube channel. I even put them on a playlist. So people will find those upgrade altars where they can slot a glyph into and upgrade it for X amount of XP. So what's in those Paragon boards, what Paragon boards each class has, check my videos and hopefully it's useful information for you out there. Now on to Paragon boards in a general broader sense. Other than sockets for glyphs, there are normal, magic, rare, and legendary nodes. Each board except the starting one for each class has one legendary node. This means a total of 8 legendary nodes per class. Apart from the starting board, the remaining 8 boards that are unique for every class, mind you, are like subclasses, subclass passive trees that you can spec into and that synergize with a certain playstyle and type of builds. Something that is interesting to note here is what the different rarities of nodes provide. Basic notes will give you +5 strength, intelligence, willpower, dexterity, and in general, that's those four major stats attributes. While magic/blue notes will give slightly better bonuses and more than just attributes. This is something like plus 8.5 crackling energy damage, for example. Rare and yellow notes, rare/yellow notes, will be further focused into a specific playstyle. Both the magic and rare notes will nudge you towards a playstyle build that is synergistic to the legendary note of that same board. An example rare note they showed during the live stream gave plus 16% damage to elites and plus 14% movement speed for 4 seconds after killing an elite. But there's more to that note. The plus 16% damage to elites get another plus 16 on top of it if the player meets the requirement of having 260 dexterity. This means that the white/normal notes one takes on their way to rare, legendary, or glyph socket notes will be a way to gain the little bit of extra stats we may need to unlock additional bonus affixes for the rare notes in our builds. Another very, stressing on very important thing to keep in mind will be that the requirements/stat cost to unlock those additional bonuses for rare Paragon notes will get higher into each next board you attach to your build. So it may be 260 dex required to upgrade Hunter Killer if it's the first one you attach to your starting board. But if you use it as your next board, so board number 3 instead of 2, that cost will be higher than 260. And then the requirement just keeps going up for each consecutive board you add for that one board itself, not for the previous ones you've added. The legendary note they showed in the live stream was Ceaseless Conduit, which gives you Crackling Energy has 25% chance to not consume a charge when triggered. Crackling Energy's damage is increased by 2% per 20 total intelligence you have. And they showed that the current bonus that this note was providing in that specific case was 50% because the player had 509 intelligence, so they only got 25 times the 2% bonus. I really like that it's showing you the current bonus, how much you would be getting with your current stats, and how much you are getting if you take something else. So you see in life how much the total you're benefiting from is. You don't have to do the maths yourself, saving you time. Now regarding the sockets, there's more to it than just swatting a glyph inside. Socketed glyphs affect and also get boosted by nearby nodes. Here is one example for a socketed glyph. We see that socketed glyph is called Tactician and it gives grants plus 50% bonus to all rare nodes within range. Additional bonus, you deal 10% increased damage for 4 seconds after casting a defensive skill. And that the requirements to unlock that additional bonus are a total of plus 25 dex purchased in radius. Now, one thing that was not clear is the bonuses that are at the very top. Did those come as a result of the plus 50% bonus to all rare nodes in the radius? Are those the 50% of the bonuses of those nodes? Or maybe are those the built-in bonuses that this glyph came with? Another fun thing to know about glyphs is that the radius they affect can be grown by leveling the glyphs through certain tiers to affect larger and larger areas. What the Diablo IV devs mentioned about the Paragon boards is that they had the goal of making it so that two players using the exact same skills could feel and play different by taking different Paragon boards, and I might add and items as well to that statement. Another thing they briefly talked about is targeted farming. We've known that there will be the equivalent of Grim Dawn's monster infrequents and stuff like that. How does it work? Targeted farming and the bonus drops certain monsters/families archetypes have attached to them. And stressing on the bonus here. One example is that on top of everything else that can drop from skeletons, they also have a small chance to drop an extra crossbow when you defeat them. This doesn't take away from other drops, but it's kind of like a lucky drop chance on top of the regular drops that can happen every now and then. Every monster family slash archetype will have a specific gear SWAT slash wood type attached to them as that lucky drop slash targeted drop chance. This will make it maybe slightly easier to obtain the extremely rare unique items in the game. For example, by killing mostly skeletons, players will get a bit more crossbow drops than usual, and that will mean a bit higher chance to get that unique crossbow thereafter than usual. And the other big reveal was that there will be one last beta weekend from May the 12th to the 14th. 48 more hours for us to play Diablo 4 before the launch in June. This time around, the maximum level will be 20 instead of 25, which means no ultimate skills or passives, and the cosmetic rewards from the first beta will be unlockable again on top of a new cosmetic reward. A trophy for our horse, which is a Shava's horn. Players can earn this trophy by defeating a Shava at least once with a level 20 character. So you gotta defeat him, and you must be level 20 when you defeat him on at least one character at least one time during that weekend. Speaking of a Shava, it will spawn every 3 hours after the first 24 hours have passed. So the beta event starts, 1 day passes, and then we have a Shava. And then after that, 3 hours later, a Shava. 3 hours later, a Shava, and so on. There should be 8 total Ashava spawns, allowing for each. Allowing for even the more casual players without much time to play in on their hands and on various time zones, I might add, to partake. During the second 24 hours, most people will have at least the chance to do an Ashava fight. Whether it will be 8 or maybe 7, because maybe at the time where the 8 spawn should happen, probably the servers will be closing. Whether it's 8 or 7, it's more than enough spawns this time around. And I hope they keep that 3 hour spawn interval for world bosses as the permanent one. It would be so much more fun if it's that way. Now, there's a little bit more I can read from the beta blog post. If I don't forget, I'll put the link in the description. So keep in mind, for those who played during the early access and open beta weekends, these details may seem familiar. However, there are few nuances we're ushering in with Server Slam. Any character progress made during early access and open beta weekends will not carry over to Server Slam. Additionally, any character progress made during Server Slam will not carry over to launch. Players may level up their characters to 20, after which you will cease to gain ability points but can continue to slay demons and earn alluring gear. The legendary item drop rate has been altered to reflect the drop rate that will be present in the launch version of Diablo 4 and not the inflated drop chances we saw in the early access and open beta weekends. And the version of Diablo 4 available during Server Slam will include all the bug fixes and updates that came with the open beta retrospective block, which was based on beta feedback, so rebalancing and all sorts of other changes. So that's the most important stuff. So May 13th starting at 9 a.m. PDT and every 3 hours thereafter with the final spawn May 14 9 a.m. PDT. So definitely 8 spawns for a Shava, and the beta weekend itself starts at May the 12th 12 p.m. Pacific time for PC, Xbox XS, Xbox One, PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, again like the previous weekend. And all classes will be playable. In regards to PvP, the devs confirmed that the PvP areas will be a tough place for soul roamers and being in a group will be advisable. They also confirmed that players will be separated into brackets based on their levels to avoid high levels fighting low level players. But they did not mention how the game will handle a low level grouping up with a high level player. For example, level 30 with a level 100 in the same party. Will they go to the level 100 area with other level 100 players, or will they go to level 30 area with other 30 players? And um, could it maybe be 130, which is the two people's levels together divided by 2 equals 65? Would that be how it is handled? I think the only sane way to handle this would be to put the low level player that is grouping with the high level player in a high level party area. But then would the low level player get a lot of experience from the kills the level 100 is making of other level 100s, if they manage to survive and not get one shot while the level 100 does that? Hopefully they find a good way to balance this one out. They also confirmed that there are two fields of hatred, and each of them will have several locations slash altars where you can purify your shards of hatred. And purified shards of hatred again has been confirmed that they will not be something you can drop. So you cannot drop purified shards of hatred. And preventing others from purifying their shards and killing them while they're trying to do so will obviously be one of the best ways to get some shards. Every time someone tries to purify their shards, other people in the same field will get notified of this and of the exact location this is happening. They also confirmed that there is no incentive to gate gank players and kill them immediately as they come into the fields of hatred, as they won't have any unpurified shards of hatred to drop. But assholes will always exist, and I bet there will be cases where players do griefing and gate ganking at the entrance to those fields of hatred. Elixirs are supposedly there to help as well, as being able to move to a different field of hatred if one is being gate ganked. But what happens when both fields of hatred have people gate ganking? Hopefully they figure out a way to prevent griefing. Hopefully you can report people for gate ganking and griefing, because I mean, what's the fucking point of abusing the system? And at the end, they did talk about something more, which is seasons. Very briefly, they mentioned that every season there will be a rotation of 30 plus. They haven't set a specific number yet of dungeons, but a solid number of dungeons will be um, up for rotation. They will be in the rotation for that season of dungeons that could be upgraded to Nightmare Sigils. Dungeons for which you could loot Nightmare Sigils, craft Nightmare Sigils, and boost them from the regular versions to the Nightmare versions. So not all 115, 120 plus dungeons will be able to become Nightmare dungeons every season. I think I'm not a big fan of this. I wish all 100 and whatever number of dungeons would be, instead of having that rotation, to add more variety every season instead of keeping us to those small number. If they do it with the rotation, then do no less than half. Be generous, do at least 60 dungeons every season for rotation. 6 is a good number, Diablo's number, so why not 66 dungeons every season? Now, another thing they mentioned is that renown resets each season. I've already seen that information from interviews here and there. So, a renown resets each season, but they did mention that the altars of Lilith in an interview will not reset. At least not the account-wide stat boost that comes with those altars of Lilith. So you still get to collect them every season and get a little bit of experience you get and renown for taking those. But from what we know is that the stat boost will be permanent for the whole account and will carry over each season. But renown rewards will reset, and for every zone they have added much more renown than is needed to complete the requirements, the thresholds for renown needs to get all the rewards. So even if the altars of Lilith don't give renown each season, it will still be enough from the other sources to earn the rewards. And there will also be more in-depth info regarding seasons, the battle pass and seasonal content and stuff like that next month in May during the next developer live stream, which probably would be sometime around the beta if I might guess correctly. To get notified when I upload more content like this one or other builds and guides for Wooter and not so Wooter games, you can subscribe to my channel and hit that bell button to not miss out on notifications. As well as keep in mind there's something called memberships on YouTube, which lets you be a paying member for my channel to get access to perks such as emotes and badges made by me, as well as the option to get one-on-one tutoring for the very basics of Adobe Photoshop, Premiere and After Effects. And memberships can be cancelled at any time if you no longer want to be a member. Thanks for watching all the way until the end, Struck Web. Keep it cool until next time and goodbye.